Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Act 3. Thanks so much for joining us today. On today's program, we're going to try something very unique, very different. But since we've all been at home, or many of us have been home during COVID-19, we've been probably watching all kinds of law and order kind of programs and television shows that lead us to wonder what it's like to be a mayor. Well, it just so happens that one of my dearest friends happens to be the mayor of Fraser Lake. And so I invited her to the program today to share the truth about being a mayor. Welcome to the program, Sarrah. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. How are you?
I am lovely. Thanks so much for joining us. Sarrah Storey, you have been the mayor of Fraser Lake for how long?
You know what? It's going to be 2 years come November.
Was it something you thought you would find yourself doing, or like what brought you to become a mayor? I mean, that's a big job. What made you decide to go down that road?
Never thought about becoming a mayor. It was never on my bucket list or things to do list of any kind. I have 2 kids and I lived in Prince George for about 24 years. And I decided one day to move to Fraser Lake because my husband dragged me here. And
thank you. Husbands tend to do that.
Well, I think that tends to be what happens is the men from Fraser Lake leave Fraser Lake. They find a woman and they bonk them on the head and they drag them back. Right? That's what we say here, which is kind of cute. So no, I never had any aspirations to be in politics in any way, and came to Fraser Lake, and then I started looking around and thinking, like this, we could do this and we could change this. And I did a lot of volunteer work in the community, a lot of ball tournaments, events. And I worked for a municipality as a manager of recreation for the district of Vanderhoof, so we live right in the center of BC. So we're about 2 hours west of Prince George. For all those people that are, on listening, they may not know where Fraser Lake is, but, here I was in this community, which I just love. And I thought, well, we're kind of missing this, or we need this, and the kids would be happy with this. And then I had 2 children, and now they're 8 and 10, and to make sure that the kids had something, and the seniors. So I started a senior center as well with my mother-in-law. And, things just started happening where, you just do all this volunteer work to try to make things better in a community. And then you realize, could really make things even better, and you start to wonder, how could you make things better? So
exactly. Yeah,
it kind of just morphed into my students. I worked for a college and I was teaching a job options program, and I was raising all this money for the Legion and the Meals on Wheels program, and we raised $5,000, and I wrote a letter to council, and they wanted me to come to council and give them this explanation on why I wanted to do this event and teach these students how to do an event or put on an event or raise money and all this and all of this, because I wanted this arena for free. I wanted them to look at.
So there was the payoff. there was the payoff. It's like, oh my gosh, I need the venue. And I need the venue. Let's see if we can find a way to bring the venue and the community together and get the kids involved. So by participating in all those areas and then calling you into council, was there a process? Did somebody just say to you, you really should be the mayor of our town?
No, what happened was I thought, well, I already wrote the letter. Why do they want me to come to council? So I went to council and they said, can you explain this? And I said, so I explained what was like really in the letter. And I said, well, this is what we want to do. We want to raise the money. It's a social, we're putting on community spirit family fun night. So we want to involve the community, and we want to make money, and we want all the vendors, all the businesses in town to be able to sell their wares at Christmas time, and, bring the youth together and do all of these carnival games upstairs. So it was like this huge event, paint the ice, everything. And they looked at me and they said, well, why are you doing it on Thursday night? And that was their only question. And I thought, well, because it's the only day that the arena is available. So,
it makes sense. Why not?
So they said to me, well, we'll let you know tomorrow. And council was on Wednesday. The event was the next day. It was Thursday. And I thought, okay, well, that's good. You're going to let me know tomorrow because the event's tomorrow.
There's
so
no
anyway,
notice at all.
yeah. So the next day I get this notice and they said, well, you could pay half of the arena fees. And I was, at the time going, I really wanted their support with the rec coordinator and to do this because I was the manager of recreation and had a pretty big budget in Vanderhoof and thought, they really should have got on board with the social side of things and the component that I was looking at and thought, really, really wish they had, jumped on board with this because we're doing all the hard work. They could just look like superheroes walking in here and helping us with this. So the students looked at me, and these are adult students, okay? So this isn't just like little kids or anything.
Yeah,
these are adult students. And they all
Sure.
looked at me and they said, Sarah, why don't you just run for mayor one day? And I looked at them and I thought, why don't I? Just
Really?
because I can't remember how old I was at the time. I'll be 40 this year. So, I probably ran that program for about 7 years. So this probably would have been quite a while ago now, but because I was on council for, 3 years. Yeah. So I would say this was probably 6-7 years ago. And I thought, well, why don't I run for council? Why don't I run for mayor? I could do that. Why not? I want to make things better.
So I started the program off, Sarah, saying, people were watching television and COVID-19, has got a lot of people sitting in front of TV. Now that you've been the mayor for a couple of years, how true are some of those stories? Like, do you really have our RCMP wrapped around your finger? Do you really have the beck and call of the city to do, the powerhouse things that people may assume happen when you become mayor?
Well, I think a lot of the things you see on TV, obviously, are a little bit different. I think it is different in bigger municipalities in the States, when those are most of the things that we're seeing, not maybe in Canada. In Canada and British Columbia in particular, the mayor really has limited power. You don't have the kind of power that you're seeing on TV where you just walk into the RCMP office and say, I want this and this and this. Although I can call them and say, hey, Sergeant Rumming, how's it going today? How are things? You have those relationships and you are the voice of the community, but it's a little bit different than what you see on TV for sure. You have a council and in Fraser Lake, we have a council of 5 people. So there's the mayor and 4 other councillors and we vote and make decisions together. It's not the mayor making decisions on their own. And so that's kind of how it works. It works a little bit differently than, even though a lot of people blame the mayor for whatever happened in a vote, the mayor might have voted on it different on the other side of things. So you can't always blame the mayor for everything. It doesn't actually work in this in the scheme of things, if that makes sense.
That's important to know because I have to tell you, a lot of people in any community, it doesn't matter which community. I know Leonard Krogh here as our mayor in Nanaimo. Great guy, wonderful guy, and we're grateful actually to have him on board. He's been an incredible support to our community. And he's done a lot of work, but frankly, people don't always agree with what he has to say. And sometimes the people that are really on board with him may not really understand the inner workings that go behind the scenes. You as a mayor, you have an intricate feeling of how things are going within your community. And as you said, every community is different. But as a province, how does that all work together? You just were very recently had a new election for you to become the president of the, share with me, what is that?
So there's 5 area associations in BC. The area associations all have different names. I'm sure you can research yours. That'll be a good thing for people to do. So you know what yours is called in your area. Mine is called the North Central Local Government Association. And again, it's one of 5. We cover 69% of the land mass. So basically from 100 Mile to the Alaska border and from Haida Gwaii to the Alberta border is my region for my area association. So it's a big geographical area, and I was just elected on Friday to be president of the North Central Local Government. Yay!
Yay! So, congratulations! Yay! Fantastic!
Yeah, it's very exciting. So what we do at those area associations is all the resolutions that come from the different communities. So each municipality has an option to build resolutions, and they say things like "therefore be it resolved," and it's a solution-based, resolution where we have at the end of it what we'd like the government or FCM to do or UBCM to do. So a lot of times our area associations, except for this year, we meet every September in either Whistler, Vancouver, or Victoria. It kind of rotates. Mm-hmm. It has been in other communities around the province, but really the bigger centers are the easiest because all the municipalities meet up at UBCM every year. and you go through all the area resolutions, all the area associations resolutions, and if they get past at UBCM, then they move forward again. So the UBCM takes those resolutions and sends them to either to FCM, or they fight for them themselves and go right to the legislative building in Victoria and meet with the ministers, the critics, the different people, and they really try to push, whether it's, I'll give you an example if you'd like an example of a resolution.
Exactly.
So one in Fraser Lake that I'd put forward, and Fraser Lake had never had resolutions actually before I became mayor. I put 3, and Fraser Lake wasn't really proactive when it came to resolutions, but the one we did put forward was a water hazard buoy, for instance. So if somebody gets an accident on a lake because of a natural reef, for instance, so if there's a natural reef in any of your lakes in BC, most of the time, there's nothing that can be done. So I wanted water hazard buoys put on reefs, especially with low water levels. So we're obviously not dealing with low water levels this year, but
not in the moment. Not in the moment. Yes.
And all the fires, and most people know that the biggest fires in BC actually happen to be in central BC, which is where I live, right in the center of BC. Fraser Lake had the biggest fires here. So the water levels were really receding. So all of a sudden we were seeing these reefs. So I didn't want, locals, tourists to come into Fraser Lake and hit one of those, destroy their boats, their props, or get into a major accident, or, somebody pass away or die from one of these terrible incidences. And it could happen, especially if somebody hits something with, they're pulling a jet skier behind them on a boat and they hit that reef. So I wanted to get buoys, or people call them buoys. I prefer buoys because buoys sounds a little silly to me, but
I'm a sailor, honey. I call them buoys too.
Right? It sounds way better.
I know it does. It's a pronunciation preference. That's all.
So if we put a water hazard buoy on these reefs so people didn't hit them, unfortunately, municipalities are liable, which made it didn't make any sense to me. Why are we liable? We're trying to save people. We're trying to help people. So one of the resolutions we passed was that the government, federal government, because it's actually on the federal side of things, look at how we can make municipalities not liable, but yet we could still put a water hazard buoy on something. So to warn people, don't hit this, you could get hurt, and that's easy to understand. So those types of things are different resolutions, but there's a lot of resolutions you'll see around health in the north, and just little things and big things, everything. It's from anything you can imagine, there'll be a resolution about, basically.
Let's explore the resolution. If there is a resolution right now under COVID-19, have you put forward, or have most mayors put forward any resolutions to that? Or is that community by community? Or have you had, some of the community in your area resistant?
Well, I haven't seen a lot of resolutions around COVID, but we have minister meetings, once a week, once every other week, with Minister Robinson and the Premier, when he can make it to one of them, and all the municipalities, have a chance to speak and voice their concerns if we're talking about, seniors or low income, or whatever it might be. So a lot of times with COVID, it's one of those things, unless there's something really important that we really can see a solution, that we can fight for as an area association, or we can fight for as the entire area, it's going to be different. We're going to see different things. So I haven't really seen a whole lot of resolutions when it comes to COVID right now. But, we're seeing a lot around solid waste management. You're seeing a lot around caribou, for instance. Things are different, obviously, in the north than they probably are in the south, right? And then the island, you guys are on the island, it's different there too. You have different issues where, wolves are an issue here and grizzlies are an issue here, where you are, they're not an issue. So, or they could be. I mean, I know there's discussions around wolves and some of the issues you guys have. And I know you guys do have bears and different things in the area, but
yeah, our situation is very different, no question about that. Having said that, this year, and just as a sidebar, having nothing to do with being a mayor or any of the resolutions, just a sidebar, this year for the first time, because there has been such a strange climate area, I don't even know what to say, but grizzly bears for the very first time have swum across from the mainland to the tip of Vancouver Island, and we've never had that before. So
Wow.
we're noticing, because of climate change,
Right.
food scarcity, that the wildlife is making inroads that they've not perhaps done for a long, long time. And of course, with so many people staying home with COVID-19, being more cautious when they're in public, animals that normally that are in our wilderness are coming into the streets, which they don't typically do on Vancouver Island. Well, they do, but not to the degree we're seeing them right now. You know,
Right.
I'm curious, going back to being a mayor. I mean, so what is I mean, this sounds really strange, but what's your job? Like, what do you oversee? You manage? You like how could you define being a mayor? What does that look like?
I don't think it's just an easy, you know, quick sentence or two in what we do. It's really a full-time job, even though most mayors get paid very little, especially in the north. I mean, bigger communities obviously have bigger budgets. As a mayor in Fraser Lake and smaller rural kind of communities, I mean, there's a lot of mayors that don't make more than 20,000. It's 20,000 and under, as a
Really?
year, as a
Yeah.
full-time job. And most people, if you're not a retired mayor and you have to work on top of it, you're working 24 hours a day some days, depending on what's going on with COVID, for instance, or fires like we were seeing, and right now with the flooding. Though that's not impacting my community, it's going to be impacting other mayors. But in a day, I have many emails. You're dealing with everything from BC Hydro emailing you to, right now we have a lot of camps moving into the area. So it's really public relations and smoothing things over and talking to people and making sure people are okay and pushing things that are really important to your community as well. So right now I'm working on a lot of beautification programs and tourism and looking for grants constantly. It's a little bit different for a small town mayor than it is for a big mayor. A small town mayor has to do a lot of things on their own. I mean, obviously, I don't know if all mayors do, but I write my own speeches. I write my own everything. I do a lot of the heavy lifting where, I set up for events and help. I bought all the ice cream for the parade for Canada Day.
So
Like
you've got your sleeves rolled up and you're right in there with everybody
yeah.
doing the work alongside.
That's right. And then
Yeah.
most mayors attend regional district meetings.
Mm-hmm.
So they're normally appointed to the regional district, and then we have other appointments as well. So you're dealing with a lot of different things on a daily basis. You don't actually know what you're going to be dealing with on a daily basis. You think you think today I'm doing this and this and this, and I have 6 Zoom meetings, and I'm meeting the premier this day, and I'm, talking to Minister Robinson on this day, or whatever it might be. And then all of a sudden you're dealing with a northern health issue and trying to get doctors into your community to dealing with trains. You just don't know. It's kind of an interesting job. I mean, one day I had a call from the RCMP asking me if I could find them chicken feed because there were thousands of chickens all over the road because a transport truck of chickens had an accident. Like, I have no idea what I'm getting into, but there you go, right there. That's finding chicken feed for chickens all over the highway. It's
Sarah,
just one of those things. Yes.
If you have just tuned in, thank you so much for tuning in. We are talking via Zoom to Sarrah Storey. She's the mayor of Fraser Lake, and you are listening to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM in beautiful Nanaimo and on Vancouver Island. Sarrah, I mean, I can't even imagine having as part of my job description finding chicken feed.
Well, it was a random call.
But you have some really serious things that happen in your community. I know that recently you had, as many of us do in our communities, people get lost, people, go missing, emergencies happen. What kind of a relationship as a mayor do you have, or what kind of pull do you have with emergency crews to be able to help facilitate finding people who have gone missing, or just helping to temper a situation that could be dire?
Yeah, it's one of those situations where most mayors aren't allowed in the emergency operation centers. So those are called EOCs. You'll hear that a lot. I was part of our emergency response unit for a lot of years here. I did a lot of different things when it came to fires and things like that. So I know the ins and outs of things a little bit more, but really my goal is normally to calm the community down. I tend to, if there's somebody missing or there's an issue or a major death in the community, I tend to reach out and make sure the family's okay and try to keep people calm and try to basically, especially in small towns, you try to keep the rumors down. So instead of letting people just kind of just go, I normally try to make, really nice Facebook posts and try to make things, calm and friendly and remind people to be respectful of families and their wishes. And it's like I said earlier, a lot of public relations. And I have a really good relationship with our RCMP and fire department and regional district, and the list goes on. So when there is a major emergency, most of the time, they'll let me know kind of what's going on. And sometimes it's been a bit different. We had a fire 2 years ago now where it just kind of came up real quick and was going really fast right to our sawmill. And it was on the Notley-Witten land in Lejac, where they're building the camp right now for Coastal GasLink. But it was going really fast and it was really windy that day. And I was actually on the phone with the regional district and I had the police, our RCMP officer right beside me. And it was just me and him at that time. I was pretty close to first on the scene, just coming back from a soccer game in Vanderhoof, heading home, and I'm getting all these messages, and that's the best part about being mayor. Everybody asks you everything because I think you know all the answers, but I don't always. So
that's usually how it goes. Yeah.
They're like, "Sarah, is there a fire?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'm not even home yet." It was a fire, so I start getting closer to Fraser Lake and I just see the fire, and it's huge, and it's just running, and you can see the flames and they're enormous. So I get there and they, RCMP officers standing there, and we're pretty good friends. He's moved on since now he's in Alaska now, or close to Alaska there. And anyway, he says to me, "Sarah, what do I do?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm going to get a hold of the regional district and even ask them if they even know there's a fire." Well, my CAO, he hadn't been told there was a fire yet. So I'm like, "We need people here now. We need bombers." And so we said, "Well, we're actually sending out." So I'm on the phone with them, and so is the constable. And they're like, "Well, we're going to send helicopters to monitor the situation and just check it out first. We gotta check this over.
Test the water and make sure it's okay."
Yeah. We're just gonna send helicopters first just to assess the situation. Well, I said, I'm here. I'm assessing the situation. I got this covered. You need bombers now because it's gonna hit the power lines. Well, I'm sure they just loved that, but they didn't. Nobody balked. That's normally not your job as mayor. And off these helicopters showed up, but the power went out about 20 minutes later because sure enough it hit the power lines.
Sure.
And it's a huge set of power lines, so they had to reroute power from the Burns Lake side to get power to us. And I was really worried how long that was going to take and how much the cost to replace all of those lines, because that impacts us as consumers, right? So I was definitely worried, but it was not a normal situation where the mayor's on the ground saying, "Hey, there's a fire and I need you guys here now. What are you doing?" No, don't send helicopters, just send the bombers. I'll tell them where to go.
Exactly. Wow. Well, that must have been an interesting part of your day as you're driving home.
Yeah, you never know.
How do you reconcile some of the things that happen? I mean, there must be, as you said, there's so many things. You never know what your day is going to bring. And so what, if a person decided that they wanted to become a mayor, what could they expect from the very beginning? How do you navigate working constantly and having small children and it's more than just having children, because executives have children at home and they work all the time. So, but being a mayor is a very different thing. You've got the entire public coming after you all the time, asking questions. How do you navigate through all of that?
I think you just have to be a really flexible person, and I think you need to find the humor in everything too. And I like humor, so that's really easy for me. And I think just being a genuinely good human being is really part of it as well. You don't get into politics, I don't think. Not all of us do, because we want to be career politicians. We get into it because you really want to make something better. You really, if you know, especially if you don't like politics, people say, oh, I hate politics. Well, I'm not really one of those people that loves politics. I just like the action of doing something and making it better. If you can leave the world better than you found it, and that's your goal in life, if you can look at your community and say, you know,
Yeah.
I'd rather change this and try to help fix it as opposed to complaining, I think that is a way better thing to do in life than just sit there and complain, because we can all complain. Like I can complain like everybody
Absolutely.
else, but it definitely is easier to just say, you know what, I'd rather try to fix this, and this is why I'm doing it, and that gives you something in your life to feel proud of as well. I think it just causes so much more happiness in your life to know that you've helped somebody, you know, you've fixed something, or you've been able to do something with your life that was positive. And I think that gives me the motivation to do what I'm doing, because it's not always easy every day, obviously. I mean, you know, sometimes you have 5 speeches in a week, and you know, yeah, I have an 8 and 10-year-old, 2 boys that are in hockey on top of everything else.
Early
It's not
mornings and late nights.
Yeah, and I don't
Yeah.
sleep a lot. So
Yeah.
people ask
Yeah.
me, how do you get things done? And then they say, oh, right, if you ever want anything done, you ask a busy person.
That's the truth. I kid you not. The more tasks that you have to, I know for myself, I'm sure it's the same for you. The more I have on my plate, the more I can get done. The less I have on my plate, the less gets done. If I have,
That's right.
if I have a couple of days where I have the day off and that's my day off, squat gets done. If
Yep.
I've got so much on my plate, I mean, I don't know, it just disappears. It's like that, and boom, it's just done. But I wonder about having a thick skin, because politicians often, regardless of where you sit in politics, you know, there's a lot of negativity from the public. You know, there's all the expectations. How do you deal with that negativity? Like, what do you do? I mean, your skin, Sarah's got to be pretty darn thick.
I wouldn't call my skin thick. I think I'm really lucky because I do live in a small town where everybody got to know me first. And so I found it, you know, everybody knew who I was before I ran for mayor, if that makes sense. So it was a little
Totally.
bit different. They knew I was a genuinely real person.
Yep.
They knew that, you know, I volunteered more than I didn't. So I was always giving and giving and giving, whether it's putting on 20-team ball tournaments, or, you know, putting on community spirit family fun night, continuing for 7 years after, or whatever it was, and opening a senior center and just volunteering all my time to apply for grants or whatever it might look like. You know, people just kind of knew that I had, you know, a good heart, I guess, if that
You
makes
are
sense.
you're very kind. You are that's one of the things I love the most about you, is that you are genuinely kind. You bend over backwards for people. Your warmth is, I mean, people can't see you, but they can feel you even through this radio program. You are genuinely lovely in every way.
Aw.
You really
Thanks so
are.
much, Kathy. That's
Oh,
so
it's my
sweet.
pleasure. I'm curious about being a woman in politics, though, because, you know, for years it was a man's game. And don't get me wrong, this isn't about gender, but we know historically there's not a whole lot of chicks that take this role. Better now, more and more women are starting to step up and say, nope, I'm breaking the mold. I want to do more. And I'm an old fart, in all fairness. I'm quite a bit older than you are. And I just, to see younger women in the community making such an impact and making such a difference in community is so important. Tell me about what you think about that.
Well, I think that really I've had to deal with many, many things in my life, in my instance, you know, with certain thoughts and processes around women in politics and men in politics and old boys clubs and, you know, all of
Yep,
these different
exactly.
perceived things and real things. And it is tough. It is not always easy for a woman to walk into a room and actually get respect sometimes. Other times, you know, you've earned it and you just automatically get it. And I think it's great to earn it. don't get me wrong, but I think it's also very tough for a woman when they don't get it, no matter how hard they've worked.
Yeah.
And it you know, that part is tough. I won't get into this fully because it is a tough conversation. It is a tough topic for me, because I had some, you know, issues over the years that I felt like I dealt with, but you know, I've had some incidences that really shaped me to be who I am, to prove that, you know, and I really did have to do this. I had to walk into rooms some days and be like, well, I hunt and I can fish and I can gut a moose. Sorry for you Southerners that don't do that, but us Northerners, you know, we
It's pretty
us
common.
women,
Yeah.
it's pretty common here, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
you know, I had to prove sometimes I was a man to the men, for them to accept me, if that makes sense, even though I was a woman, right? You know, a blonde woman, and you know, in her early 30s when I first started, and now, or mid 30s possibly. I'll be, like I said, I'll be 40 on Christmas Day.
Oh, you were born on Christmas Day. I did not know that.
And
wow.
You know, it took a lot for me to get here. And when I first ran for mayor, so I ran twice. I was on council, but I got in a by-election. But first I ran for mayor. And people came up to me and said, well, you should have ran for council first. And, well, you're too young and you need more experience. And, you know, I would get these types of things. But then later on, I would explain, like, well, hold on a second. What did the previous mayor have to do to prove that he was capable to do this job? And people would look at me and go, oh, well, right. I guess not, you know, that wasn't really a thing, but because they were an older man, it seemed like, you know, maybe that was easier for them to get into. They were more respected, or they proved themselves just because they had two things in common. And so for a woman that's getting into it, especially, I find more in the North, where it hasn't been as common for mayors to be women. There weren't very many women mayors. It's becoming more and more a thing. And you're seeing more and more women step up and realize, well, I can do this. Why not? Just because you're a girl doesn't mean you can't. Just because you're a woman that has kids doesn't mean you can't. You know, it does help to have a really supportive husband. And I'm raising two young boys. I want my boys to know that they can do anything a woman can do. And I want my, you know, if I had girls, I'd want them to know they could do anything a man could do. It's not, you know, it's,
we have our strengths,
except for have babies, but
yeah, that one fine line.
There's a few things that, you know, women and men probably do differently. But I think women do think a little bit differently than men. So I do think, when somebody said to me, oh, I heard you wanted an all-female council, I remember saying, no, I don't. I want a balanced council. I want a council of doers. I don't care what your gender is. I want doers. I want people on council that have open minds, that really care about their community and really want to do something good for the world, their community, their province, whatever it might be. But it hasn't nothing to do with gender. And I hope people start to realize that gender is not, you know, the reason why you should or should not run. It should be, you know, really your heart. And that's what it boils down to. Anybody is capable. It does not matter your age. It does not matter your gender. I've seen 23-year-old mayors do an amazing job. They have so much energy. They can do a lot. But I see, and they're smart. There's so many smart people out there, and their age really doesn't make a difference. And
yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's really important. And for those of you who have just tuned in, by the way, you are listening to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7. I'm Kathy Holmes. I'm happy to be your host. And I love bringing inspiring people to the program. And Sarrah Storey, who's the mayor of Fraser Lake, is just such an inspiring woman. And we've been talking about what it takes to be a mayor. And what you don't know, Sarrah, is that this radio station actually belongs to what used to be called Malsapina University. It's now VIU. And so we actually have people of all ages that listen to this program, although Act 3 in itself is really kind of geared toward the third stage of life, right? So, you know, people who are 50 and up. Having said that, we have listeners of all ages. And what we find is that the younger generation now that are coming out of university have got the vigor and the desire to make such incredible change in the world. And I believe that that's been really historically the same throughout generations. I don't think that has changed. I think that people, when they have a desire to do great things, they do great things just because that's what they want to do, right? But to see more and more women coming out and at younger ages, taking chances, learning things they haven't quite learned before, and actually breaking the mold that historically is not that old. It's only, I mean, 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, it's not that long ago. It's really not that long ago. My son was born in 1991. He's now almost 30, and his generation was different. And in my generation, I mean, this is just so crazy. My first job, I made $1.65 an hour, right? If you can imagine. And we are a few years apart, right? So, but I think about where we were, you know, in the 70s and 80s, you know, making that kind of money, and where we are today as mayor in the north, making about $1.65 an hour, if the truth be told, for the kind of work that you're doing. You know, I think that part of it is just that the fact that the inspiration can be so great for people to try new things and to jump out of the molds that are just so gone. How are you finding right now? You know, there's been a lot of controversy in the North about pipelines and First Nations communities, and I'm not wanting to go into any specific area, but where I'm trying to direct the conversation is, how do you deal with the controversy when you've got two sides of the fence that are really at battle with each other? How do you help navigate people so that everyone is heard at the table?
You know, I think you're right. It is very controversial. It's been, you know, it's been interesting watching kind of things play out when people don't really know everything that's going on. I mean, there's been a lot of different things that you guys have heard, I'm sure, in news and radio, and the hereditaries versus elected chiefs, and, you know, and pipelines for or against, and then people not knowing, well, it's gas as opposed to oil, or and having communities that are totally pro-industry against communities that think that, you know, you can just survive off tourism, or, you know, that we really got to focus on the environment. And I think everybody is on the same page when it comes to environment. Yes, we have to take care of the environment, and I think that's so important. And there's many things that I'm trying to do up here in Fraser Lake, including seeing if we can have, you know, first of its kind recycling plant built in the north, since we have cheaper land and the rail lines here, and try to find ways to make secondary products out of goods. There's so many cool things that we could do right now when it comes to forestry and looking at wood innovation and different designs, and making sure we're really utilizing what we are taking out of the earth and then putting it back properly. So I think there's a fine line with things. I think we have, you know, the extremists that take it to one level, and, you know, there's people in the middle, and it's quite the situation. I try to, you know, really stay out of it as a mayor, because my opinion isn't the only opinion. I try to respect other people's views and learn and listen, and I think that's the best thing we can do. I'd love to see less hate and less, you know, drama on all of, you know, the
I hear you,
Facebook.
sister.
Yeah.
Oh, I hear you, sister. It's just, it's horrible. It's in the United States right now, and I know that this is not, Canada is very different, but
it's impacting us though. Yeah.
It's impacting us, right? And there's a lot of positive things that are coming out of the hate, but hate in itself, I hear you, it's got to go. I mean, we're not serving anybody by coming to the table with such grief that we can't see the forest through the trees, for lack of better words.
Yeah, I agree. It's tough to watch. It's tough to, you know, try to even teach your children about it.
Exactly.
At this point. It's just like my kids walk around and, I don't like Trump. I mean, my kids don't even know Trump, but they don't like him, you know, for all the things that they hear, because there's just so much out there. And it's interesting to hear that. But then I have friends that love Trump, and so all of you out there listening, I don't really like Trump myself, because I don't understand him, and whatever else. I won't get into the reasons I don't like him, but
we've all got a laundry list.
So,
you know.
I try to stay out of those things though, because there's no point in me as a mayor getting involved in all of the different viewpoints and struggles and differences. What I do is work on other things. I work on the Tri-Council, which is, you know, in Fraser Lake, we have on either end of our community, we have the Slatin First Nations and the Notley-Wet'en First Nation, that they have their own communities on either end. And instead of, you know, coming up with controversial things, what we do is we work together on finding solutions and working together on trying to help all of our community members together, whether it's buying an SPU, which is a sprinkler protection unit, trying to make sure that we're taking care of the forests and the fires and whatever else, and working our fire departments, working together in our fire department, training their fire departments and working together. It's really unique and different. So I think solutions and looking at solutions as opposed to spreading hate and violence and negativity is just so much more important to me. And that's kind of how I look at things and do things, even though I do have my opinion on many things. I just hope people just go and get their facts and check their facts first before they share things. And that's the part that I hope people really, really focus on, because there's a lot of negativity out there and it's not always true.
Yeah, and most of the time, you're quite right. It's not fact driven. And so when people have, if they've got something to say, they need to have the backup. But speaking of that, because I think, you've several times you've talked about coming together, right? Whether or not it's part of the association now as president of the association now, or being a mayor. So when you're council and you come together and you have something that you want to take to the province or you want to take to other mayors, is there a process? What does the process look like so people get a better understanding? Like, let's say as a community member, I come to you and let's talk about the buoy, right? The resolution, you guys have come together for the buoy, you want to have that happen. It sits in your community for a little while, people have the conversation about it, and then what? Like, just, can you walk us through?
Yeah.
Because
So
it's not that easy.
Well, actually, sometimes those things are easy, especially when you have an awesome CAO like I do. So, I say, this is what I want to do. We work on the resolution. I sit there and I write it out. So a lot of times I do, like I said before, I do a lot of my own work.
Chief cook and bottle washer.
Yeah, it's, when you got a small community, you don't want to overburden your staff either with all the things you want to do. And there's a lot I want to get done.
Sure.
We've moved more grants through this community in the last year and a half than we probably have in 5. So, we're working on all of these projects and I really want to get a lot done. So what we do is we write them up, bring it to council. You put it on the table, in new business, if that's where it's supposed to be, which most of the time something like that would be in new business. And this is what I want to do. This is why I want to do it. Can I get somebody to make a motion? And it sometimes
much like every other meeting. Yeah.
It could be really quick. You call for a discussion. You need somebody to, put it on the floor first, and then you get a seconder, and then you have the discussion, and then you call the question and you see how many people are in favor. So sometimes, you have controversial votes where it takes a lot longer to get something, through, and then sometimes it will go through and then people reconsider and you can bring that back up for reconsideration. But you have within 30 days to normally bring something up for reconsideration, where we did have a very controversial vote in Fraser Lake with snow removal for seniors. So, those things do happen, but it's normally pretty simple. A lot of municipalities have these things pretty down pat where, you've read the council package before you go to council, so you know what's coming up. You're not supposed to walk into a council meeting, with your mindset on how you're going to vote on anything. You're really supposed to be open-minded when you walk into the council meeting.
Sure.
You're not supposed to be going behind the scenes and rallying your councillors that you're in with. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to, go to that table with your open mind and make the vote to the best of your abilities by, what you think the communities really want and need. And I think that's kind of how we really do things here in Fraser Lake.
And so what happens after that resolution is made then? Does it go to a higher power, or is that the end of it? Once your team has agreed that it happens, or are there motions that actually have to go to the province?
So basically, after that resolution's done, it depends on what the resolution says. So if the resolution says, therefore be it resolved that UBCM and NCLGA or whatever other area association work on, X, Y, and Z, then, the area association can work on it as well and go to the proper ministry or whatever it might be. So it could be federal or provincial governments that it might go to. So with the water hazard buoys that we talked about earlier, that one went to UBCM, NCLJ, and it goes to the FCM as well. So, and then they're voted on again So if the North votes on something and says, we really want to work on this caribou issue, and then we get to UBCM and everybody votes it down, and the South wins the vote, like those things can happen where it's very it could be a very controversial vote at the UBCM floor. Mm-hmm. And then it might not go forward. It can completely die. Then your community is just working and advocating for themselves on something. Doesn't mean it's completely dead in the water. It just depends on what it is and how it's going to work. You'll notice a lot of times at UBCM or NCLGA, most of the resolutions go forward.
Yeah.
There's some controversial ones over the years that I've seen that haven't gone forward, but a lot of them go forward. But the issue is trying to get, the province and the feds, or whoever who's working on these, to get everything done. There's just so many requests. Some years there's over 300 resolutions that hit UBCM's floor. You can't even get through them all half the time, right?
Yeah, for sure. And would you say that the federal and the provincial governments work nicely together, or do they work?
I don't think they would say they do.
Okay. Just curious, because I don't think they would say they did either, but out of curiosity, from your point of view.
Well, we have a really awesome MP in the North. He was the mayor of Smithers. He's our federal MP. He's NDP MP Taylor Backrack, and I find that he knows everybody already from the province. So I think those types of situations where you see somebody come in that knows all of the politicians in BC, and then moves up to the federal side of things, he's gonna have the ins and outs of those relationships a lot better. So I think he would. Like, there was a incidents recently where I suggested, and this is for seniors in particular, I suggested that they build a kiosk for all community social and service centers. So all seniors drop-in centers, and I like to call them community social and service centers because I believe all communities should have one. I believe especially rural communities or communities that really don't have Service Canada or things in place, Service BC or Service Canada. There's a lot of things that, our elders, our seniors, they need supports with. They don't always have Wi-Fi, or they don't always have, technology, or know how to use technology, even if they did have access to it. And I used to teach computer literacy, so that's why I'm spouting off this. But when I suggested we put these kiosks, and we have the federal government and the provincial government work together on these kiosks, so you can do Service Canada and Service BC in one building. You walk into the center, and you can have a touch screen, and you can print your forms out that you need to sign, and then you can have the center fax it off or scan it and send it off to the right bodies, whether it's filling out,
or even help you fill it out.
That's exactly the point.
Yeah,
exactly. Because a lot of times, like being a social service center that we built in Fraser Lake called Autumn Services, we wanted to help people. So people come in all the time and Sarah or Elaine or somebody, how can you help us? Like, help us with this. How do I fill out this form? I need to apply for my pension, and I need to do. So we would help them do those things, but we don't get paid. We're not government employees, but yet we would be doing this all the time. So I said to, Taylor Backrack, MP Taylor Backrack, and I think I said it to Selena Robinson. Yeah, it was Mr. Robinson. I said, why don't we do something like this, and we build a kiosk and work together? And I know the looks that I got on my, their faces going, well, oh yeah, wouldn't that be awesome? We work together. And I was like, well, think of the money you would save. You guys could actually work together, save money, have everything in the same spot, train an employee. Even if somebody came once a month to help people fill out forms if we didn't know the answers, or there was a little help button and you pressed help right on the kiosk and somebody just popped up and helped you, it would be way better than, I don't know, way better, but, we love that in-person touch, but we're losing those in-person, places, especially with COVID right now. So it would be still nice to be able to access services, but not have to go online to try to find a phone number.
Well, especially for people that can't. I have.
Have you ever tried to go on Service BC or Service Canada and tried to find a phone number for
it
a
is
certain
insane
agency? It's really
absolutely
difficult.
Insane. Yeah.
So I said, let's make it
simple.
And if we can't find it,
if we can't find it, how can an older adult find it? But listen, I'm going to move us along from that part of the conversation just because I'm curious about something. Because I get, I hear people at this time of year bitching, pardon my language. I don't normally swear on TV or on the radio, but really complaining about taxes, 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 taxes. And as mayor, I'm curious because you know what? Most communities, you talked about budgets, right? The budget comes from the taxes and it comes from other areas, right? And so, you know, how do you reconcile people who are complaining that they're just paying too many taxes, or there's, you know, my money's not going in the right place? As mayor, what is your take?
That's a really tough one, especially knowing the ins and outs of how budgets work nowadays and how you have infrastructure issues. Like in Fraser Lake, we have $50 million infrastructure deficit that we're trying to deal with right now. So when you have a community that's never really worked on asset management or asset management policies or plans, and then all of a sudden you're going, we need to replace all the water lines and the sewage lines and the drainage issues and then repave all the roads, and you're looking at a $50 million bill, but you have no way to tax to get that. You're looking for grants. You don't know if you're going to get those grants. So it's tough when you make decisions at the council table when you're going, okay, we need a new street sweeper, we need a new fire truck, and we need a new, garbage truck. And you're a small municipality with a $2 million budget. It looks a little bit different than it does, for the city of Vancouver when they have, who knows what their budget is, it could be a $500 million budget, a $200 million budget. I have no idea. I imagine it's a very large budget. So, really, it's really tough when you don't have a huge tax base. So you try not to raise the taxes. So you try to find grants to survive. And then you have, to worry about all of those little things like employees or, it's tough. It's tough. So you can raise, so there's different things you can do, with utilities. You can raise there's two different types of utilities. So the utilities for commercial, it looks a little bit different. Light industrial, it all looks different. So you do have those regional district taxes. So the taxes have gone up in Fraser Lake the last couple of years, but Fraser Lake hasn't actually raised their taxes. And your BC assessment makes a big difference too, right? So it depends on your assessment of your house, and then it depends on all of these different things. But if the regional district all of a sudden has a hospital they have to build, the taxes go up. There's a pool that needs to be built, and it went through a referendum, and it went through, all of a sudden people's taxes go up, and people are going, well, the municipality raised taxes. And you know what? The municipality doesn't always raise the taxes. It's not always the municipality that does it. So we only went up 2% in the industrial side, and we didn't raise taxes this year with, for the rest of the community at this point, just with COVID and the way things were working. But it still impacts the community when they get their assessments.
And I think a lot of people need to understand the infrastructure piece of it. I'm so glad that you brought that up because, it's true. It's about buying the new fire truck, the new garbage truck. It's about roads. It's about things that we as community members might not see in the same way that government has to see to take a good look at what's happening for the whole community and for the safety of the community as well.
Well, and you do have infrastructure things like Prince George is losing $1 million a month right now with revenue from events because they normally have the civic center that's open, like things like that. So municipalities right now are really dealing with a huge revenue loss. So to not raise taxes this year if they didn't, means next year they're really going to be in a hard spot, likely with COVID. So then all of a sudden you might see them have to raise taxes 4% next year to pay the bills that they had to pay last year that they didn't end up being able to pay. So, there's lots of different tough things around that.
Does the federal and provincial government give any extra dollars to municipalities that are struggling? Or would that strictly come from grants in other areas? Or do the grants actually come from the provincial and the federal government?
Yeah, all the grants normally come from, provincial, federal governments. UBCM gets some money to divvy up grants and people can apply for them. But really, if you're in a hard place, there's a lot of borrowing capabilities that municipalities have as well, which is helpful, but then you still have to pay that back. So you got to be careful how you do those types of things as well. But, if you're in a tough spot, like a lot of the North has been working on a resource benefit alliance agreement. There's a lot of different fair share agreements through BC and just trying to get, their infrastructure similar to what, it is in the South. So there's a lot of things that we talk about with that where, there's a lot of money that comes from the north, a lot of mining and forestry and a lot of money that we send south. So just trying to look at those different things is part of how we as municipalities try to come up with ways to pay the bills at the end
I
of the
hear
day.
you.
But there's not really a quick bailout system though if you get
Nope.
yourself into trouble. And
Nope.
with COVID, I have no idea what that's looking like for a lot of communities right now. So we'll start hearing, you know, that probably next year at budget time and you know, closer to the end of this year. So
And we
it's
don't
tough
know what's going to
situation.
happen just as that goes, just for the fact that there may be even more COVID coming in the fall, that second wave, third wave that people are talking about. So we can only do our best. You know, Sarah, I'm so sad to let you know that our time is just about up, and I just can't believe it has gone so fast because I still have so many more questions. But
sorry.
but the good news is thank you so very, very much for sharing some insight on what it's like to be a mayor. I mean, I've always been curious, and so you've kind of made me inspired. There may just be one day I might just decide to run. I don't know, but that would be a long time from now. Meanwhile, I'm just curious if you could give, as everybody who listens to the program knows, and again, you're listening to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. If there was one, you know, teachable moment, one takeaway, one awe-inspiring piece that you'd like to imbibe on the community, what would that be for you?
You know, there's two things I tell people all the time. One, do more than your share. That was actually from my mother-in-law's father. He always would say that, and when I heard that, I thought, yeah, that's what I want to teach my kids. You know, do more than your share and leave the world better than you found it. Those are my two things that really focus on in life, and I teach my children as well. And I think it's just so important to look at the positive, and that's really what it boils down to for me. If that works, you know, for the ending of this, I just think that it's just one of those things that your life isn't just, you know, just about you. Sometimes it's about taking care of others, and I think that's really important for me.
I wish that we were standing in the same room right now, because I would give you the biggest cyber hug, the biggest squish, COVID or not. I just squish you like crazy. You have been listening to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM here in beautiful Nanaimo, and we have been talking to the wonderful Sarrah Storey, the mayor of Fraser Lake. Thanks so very, very much for tuning in this week. I can't wait to share another week with you next time. Thanks again, Sarrah, for joining us. We'll see you next time on Act 3.